Hello everyone, welcome back to ISO 42001 series on UpBrightSkills. If you are new here this week, we have already released first video on International Management Standard for AI. If you haven't watched that first video yet, I will drop the link here and in the description. It lays down the groundwork for everything we are going to cover going forward in this entire series. So artificial intelligence is transferring the way organization works. But before we can manage AI responsibly, we need to answer some fundamental questions. Why are we using AI? Who is affected by it? What risk and expectations do we need to consider? And most importantly, what exactly falls within the scope of AI management system. So in ISO 42001, clause 4, context of the organization helps us to answer these questions. It lays the foundation for every other requirements in the standards by helping organization to understand their business requirements, stakeholders, AI roles, and governance responsibilities. So in this video, we will break down and we will cover different clauses of 4. So first is 4.1, which is understanding the context of the organization. 4.2 is understanding the needs and expectation of interested parties. Then we have determining the scope of AIMS and implementing the EIMS. So let us go and deep dive further. So the first one is understanding the organization and its context. And the must to have requirement is identify and assess the internal and external factors which are affecting AI. So the first one is skills and awareness. AI is powerful, but only when people knows how to use it properly, right? So if people is not aware, if they don't have understanding about AI and its limitations and the risk, then definitely they are the one who can make more mistakes, right? So just to give you an examples, an employee using ChatGPT, and just to summarize the data, he is uploading the confidential information to ChatGPT, right? And this can create a privacy and the compliance issue. So to safeguard that, we have to make sure that we give the proper training to the employees and they have a proper skills and awareness to work on AI and to work with AI. The next is AI culture. So this is about the mindset, not just rules. If the people in the organization don't genuinely believe in doing AI the right way, they will treat the policy as a checkbox exercise instead of something they actually go and follow, right? So good AI governance isn't about just following the policies or isn't just having the policies. So it is about the people, those who believe those policies are definitely important part of their processes. So when an employee sees AI as everyone's responsibility, they are more likely to use it carefully and report the issues. So if the governance becomes just another checkbox exercise, even good policies won't be followed consistently. So we have to make sure that we have this kind of culture in our organization so that everyone believes in the processes, policies, and they understand what are the importance of these policies and procedures and the governance, right? So just to share an example, the company has a rule that AI generated reports must be reviewed by humans. So that should be a culture, right? So if an employee skips the review because the AI is usually right, incorrect information could reach to the customer, right? So the human in loop is very much important. So this becomes an AI culture process which you inculcate in your organization. So the next we have is budget, skilled personnel, tools and technology. So successful AI projects requires an investment, right? So the investment can be in the skilled people, can be in the right tools and technologies, and we have to do it at the right time, right? So the organization needs skilled people, right softwares, secure infrastructure, good time to monitor and improve the AI systems. Without these resources, the project becomes risk and the governance activities often get neglected. So just to share an example, a company launches an AI chatbot but does not allocate staff to monitor its responses. So what will happen? So over time, the chatbot starts giving incorrect responses or incorrect informations, right? Because nobody is reviewing and updating. So that becomes the unsuccessful implementations, right? Or unsuccessful product. The people cannot trust your product, right? So we have to make sure that someone is there and monitor. So for that, we require a skilled people. We require a right technology, right tools and technologies, and right budget. Then we have data quality, right? So data quality, the AI is only good when we have a good data given to the training models, when we train our AI models, right? So if the data is not good, definitely the output which you are going to get, that will be a garbage, right? So that will not be a meaningful, that will not be giving you the good results what you are expecting, right? So to share an example, an AI recruitment system is trained mostly on historical data for one department. So as a result of that, what will happen? Unfairly favors certain candidate profile, right? And overlooks qualified applicants, right? So this will not give the candidates which we are looking for, right? It will only favor certain candidate profiles and rest will be ignored. So this will be an improper result, right? So we have to make sure the data which we provide to the AI models, it will be a very good data, and so that our systems can be trained on that. Other internal factors can be like cyber security risk, where this is I mean, most of the common risk, if we have any kind of AI systems implemented or deployed, definitely those cybersecurity risks are always there. So when an AI system introduces a new security challenges, attacker may try to steal AI models, manipulate training data, or deliberately provide misleading inputs to trick your AI into making incorrect decisions, right? So they will try to penetrate your AI systems so that they can get some informations, or they can change your AI model in such a way that it starts giving the wrong answers or wrong informations or a garbage, right? So AI systems needs same level of security as any critical business applications, right? So cybersecurity risk example can be if someone uploads a specifically crafted file that tricks your AI document processing system and it reveals a confidential information of your data from your data, or it produces the incorrect result, right? So it starts giving your wrong results or garbage basically, or it reveals the confidential informations about your systems, about your data which you have feed in, right? So that can be one of the cybersecurity. So we have to make sure that when we deploy any AI systems, we make sure that the security testing has been done properly. Then we have to understand the external factors which can affect our AI systems. So the first and most important external factor can be a regulatory and the legal requirements, right? So AI is increasingly regulated, right? So data protection laws, sector specific laws, or upcoming AI specific regulations, right? So if organization does not comply, the organization has to face a legal consequences. So consequences can be fine, maybe a legal actions, or a negative finding during an audit, right? So example can be a company uses AI to make hiring decisions but cannot explain why certain candidates were rejected. This could violate the regulation that requires transparency in an automated decisions making, right? So we have to make sure that whatever AI we are using, it is giving a proper transparency. So this is one of the requirement of AI, right? It should be transparent, right? So we have to train in such a way that we get a proper transparency from any kind of model. Then we have third party provider. So most of the organizations don't build AI entirely in house, right? Because it is very expensive and it requires a lot of computing power and a skilled personnel. So they rely on the vendors, cloud providers, and AI model providers, right? So for example, most of the companies are using ChatGPT, OpenAI, Claude, Gemini, Grok. So there are different models which are available in the market, right? So most of the people use third party models. If any of the third party models has a failure or an outage or a security issues, definitely it is going to impact your AI system. So for an example, we have created our own chatbot which is integrated with third party AI model, and that third party AI model is not available for use, right? So in that case, your application will also suffer, right? If that AI model is having some or the other security risk, then your application will also be impacted with that particular security risk. So just make sure that we can use multiple models. We should not be dependent on any kind of a specific model, right? So recently there was an example where the US government has controlled the access of GPT 5.6 and Fable 5, right? So the people, those who are using Fable 5, they must have encountered some of the other downtimes, right? Because they were not able to access those models, right? So we should not be dependent on any specific models or third party providers. We should be flexible. If this is not available, then we should switch to another model, right? Then we have data privacy. So AI system often process customer, employee, business sensitive informations. So organization must ensure that the data is collected, stored, and used responsibly. So wherever data is being stored, or from wherever or through whichever medium we are collecting the data, it should be responsible, it should be secure. Privacy failure can lead to legal actions or loss of customer trust. So if the AI model is revealing my information, the information which I have provided to AI model, then my data will be at stake, right? So I can definitely go and take some legal actions on that. Take an example, an employee uploads a payroll information into an online AI tool, can be any kind of model, it can be ChatGPT, Claude, or any other models, right? To generate a salary analysis report. So what happens here? Sensitive employee information is exposed to an unauthorized external service. Your PIA information resides in your salary data, right? Your name, your employee ID, your phone number, your email address, your company details, every information is there on the payroll salary slips, right? So if you upload those directly, your sensitive information definitely gets exposed to an external service. So make sure that we don't upload any confidential informations of the company or of ourselves, right, to any kind of publicly available models. So the next we have is customer expectation. So customer expectations are increasing day by day, right? So they also want a faster service, they want a reliable service, they want a secure service, right? And the smarter tools. So if the organization fails to meet this, the customer satisfaction will be impacted, and it can be a loss of business as well. So we have to make sure that we understand the customer requirement, understand what customer is expecting from us, right? And ensure that we deliver that to the customer. The other example of external factor can be market competitions, right? So AI is becoming very competitive advantage. So organization that adopts AI faster, effectively improves productivity, reduce cost, and deliver a better customer experience, so they will be able to grab more and more customers. If the organization is failing to meet or to adopt the AI, right, they might lose business, right, or they might lose business, right? So we have to make sure that to be there in the market, so we have to make sure that to be a competitive in the market, we have to make sure that we adopt AI as fast as possible. We adopt the skill set, we have the skilled personnel, we have the AI governance in place, so that we can deliver the AI services in a faster, effective manner. So the next requirement we have is climate change, right? So we have to assess the climate change impact, and we have to identify whether it is a relevant issue for an organization or not, right? So climate change is now a part of mostly all the ISO requirements, right? So whether it is 9001 2015, which is a quality management standard, whether it is 27001, which is an information security standard, or whether it is 42001, it is a part of every standard. So we have to assess how climate change may affect AI operations, right? We all know that AI runs on a physical infrastructure. It can be servers, it can be data centers, and it can be networks, right? So climate change is basically a rising temperature, it can be an extreme weather or resource scarcity, right, which can disrupt this infrastructure, right? So organization need to think about how these environmental shifts could affect their AI systems. So considering the climate change, we also have to think about the energy consumption and the carbon footprint, right? So training and running an AI model, especially a large one or large models, it requires a lot of electricity, right? And it generates a real carbon footprint. So organization needs to concise of this environmental cost and look the ways to reduce it, right? So both for sustainability and increasingly for regulatory and the reputational reasons, right? So nowadays lot of customers are even asking for climate change report, right? So we also have to file our carbon footprint or carbon emission report in on the portal, right? So this is becoming mandatory from the regulatory requirement and from the compliance point of view. Then we also have to evaluate risk from extreme weather, power, and data centers, right? So extreme weathers can be flood, heat wave, storm, right, which can cause a power outage, network failures, or a physical damage to the data centers. So if your AI systems depends on such infrastructures, you also need to have a contingency plan for that. So for weather related disruptions or any kind of extreme weather or extreme situations, we also have to have a contingency proper plan. Then we have to identify opportunities and sustainable and energy efficient AI, right? So as I said, beyond just managing the risk, organization also have to proactively look for the ways to make their AI operations greener, right? So using energy efficient hardwares or optimizing the models to use less compute power or choosing a data center powered by renewable energy, right? So we have to also think in those directions how we can reduce the carbon footprint. Include climate related risk in the AI assessment. So this is must to have. We when we do a risk assessment of this ISO 42001 or any kind of ISO models, ISO frameworks, we have to consider climate related risk in our AI assessment. So then we have define the intended purpose of AI systems. So we have to clearly define why the AI system is being developed, right? So before building or deploying an AI systems, organization have to clearly specify or clearly document the reason of the existence of the AI system. So without this clarity, project drift, scope creeps, and it becomes hard to judge whether the AI is actually succeeding or not. So we have to have a clear goal or clear roadmap or a clear vision that why we are building these AI systems, right? So accordingly, we can achieve our goals faster and efficiently. Then we have to specify the business problems it is going to solve. The AI system which we are going to develop, right? So we have to specify what problem we are actually solving with this AI system. So the AI systems should be tied to a concrete business problem. So not build just an AI is trendy, right? So I mean everyone knows that AI is right now trending, right? So everywhere everyone talks about AI. So we don't have to just create an AI because of that. We have to create AI or we have to create an AI system to solve some or the other business problems. So the next we have is intended users and the stake. So what we need to do here is we have to identify who will actually use the AI systems and who else will be the affected users by the AI system, whether it is customer, whether it is employees, or whether it is regulators or anyone else, right? So this will basically take a shape where you can create the needs and expectations, your goals are clear, and in that way you can design your AI system. So basically what we have to do here is we have to create an AI inventory. So whatever AI systems we have in the organization, we have to create this kind of inventory. So here you can see we have created this is one of the sample template which I've created for AI inventory. So here the system ID, which is your AI systems, the name of your AI systems, the business function, the purpose of that AI systems, what is the purpose of that system. It should have a clear cut system owner, who is the technical owner of that, vendor and the developer, whether it is an external created by external parties or whether it is an internally developed system, deployment model, whether it is in-house, whether it is on cloud, geographic scope, whether it is globally available system or whether it is specific to country based model, right? AI type, what exactly this AI is going to do, whether it is going to do some predictive analysis, whether it is going to work like a chat GPT, right? What level of anatomy we have, whether we have human in loop, yes or no. Decision impact, what kind of decision impact it is going to create, right? Whether it is high, whether it is low, whether the AI system has proper explainability, yes or no. Data sources which we are going to use in the AI systems, whether personal data is being used for training the models, yes or no. Sensitive data being used in the AI models or AI systems, yes or no. Risk level, whether it is high, low or medium, whether it is going to harm individuals, yes or no, and in what sense, whether it is going to be high potential harm or whether it is a medium potential harm, what level it is, right? Whether we have considered bias and fairness risk, yes or no. Security risk has been identified, yes or no. Human oversight, whether we have identified that, yes or no. What kind of monitoring mechanism we have, yes or no, or we can specify what monitoring we have, what regulatory standards it is going to impact, right? Current status of that AI system, whether it is live, whether it is in development, whether it is in QA, go live date if you have specific, review date. So we have to review all these parameters time to time, at least once in 6 months, or whenever there is a change in your AI systems, next review date, and the document location if there is any specific document which is attached to this particular AI system, right? So this is the template. I will share all these templates at the end of this video series. Okay, I will create a GitHub link and will post all my templates in the GitHub, so you can take a reference from that and you can modify according to your requirements and create the AI system inventory. Then we have to describe the expected outputs and the limitations. So if there is any limitations of that and the output which you are expecting from your AI systems, so all this needs to be documented. So same document you can utilize for the AI inventory systems. All these things you can document there, right? So ensuring the AI systems used for its intended purpose, right? So this is about preventing the scope creep or misuse, and AI systems built for the purpose, right? So says fraud detection, right? So it should be only specific for that. So it should not get repurposed for something else or some other purposes, like employee monitoring or like a chat GPT just to get an answer, right? So it should not drift your responses. So then we have is define the organization roles with respect to AI, right? So we have to assign a clear AI roles. So we have to assign a clear AI roles and responsibilities, right? So someone needs to explicitly own each part of AI lifecycle, whether it is development, whether it is deployment, whether it is going to be a monitoring, risk management, right? So everyone in the organization has to have some or the other roles. So developers are responsible for developing their AI systems, right? Deployment team is responsible for deploying the AI system. So monitoring team is responsible for monitoring the AI performance, biasness, transparency, and so on and so forth, right? So the governance team or a governance committee responsible for overlooking the entire governance of AIMS, risk management, and so on and so forth. So if we don't have the ownership defined, the important task fails through cracks, right? Make sure that we have a proper roles and responsibility defined. So this roles and responsibilities, if you already have some or the other ISO standard already implemented, you can use the same document just to add AI related roles in that document. Then we also have to define the accountability. So with every roles there should be some or the other accountability, right? So when an AI systems makes or influence a decision, there needs to be a clear answer: who is responsible, who is accountable, right? If anything goes wrong, someone should be taking the ownership and someone should be taking the accountability of that, right? Then we have involved business, IT, security, legal, and compliance team, right? So AI governance is not just an IT problem. It touches every business department, right? So it touches every business department, right? It can be infrastructure, it can be security, legal, compliances. So all these functions needs to be on a single table, not just a technical team, right? So everyone in the business should get involved themselves for any kind of AI systems, right? Then ensure the management provides an oversight and resources. So as we have discussed in the last slide, that enough resources, skilled personnel, proper training and awareness, guidance from the top management. So leadership can't just delegate AI governance and forget about, right? So senior management should actively oversee the AI initiatives and make sure that the teams have budget, tools, technology, and authority needed to manage AI responsibly. So they will require everything. So they have to be governing the entire process and make sure that goes on a proper direction as per the business goals and the vision. Then we have regularly reviews and update responsibilities, right? So whatever we have discussed, climate change, purpose of AI systems, roles and responsibilities, right? So we have to make sure that we regularly review, update those, and continually improve our AIMS system. So roles and responsibilities should not be the set once and forget, right? I mean, those keeps on changing based on the requirements and the expectations. So as an AI system evolve, as team changes and the new risk emerges, the organization needs to periodically revisit and update who is responsible for what. So we have to make sure that we go and review the roles and responsibilities and update according to the latest requirements. So the next we have is 4.2, which is interested parties. So after understanding the organization internal and external issues, the next step is to identify interested parties. So the interested parties are the people or the organizations that are connected to your AI systems in some or the other way. They may use it, or they may be affected by it, or they may help to build or manage it, or they have an interest how it should be used. So it can be anyone. It can be customer, it can be an employee, it can be a leaders, top management, right? So we have to identify each and every interested parties for your AI systems, those who are going to get affected or they are going to use it. We have to consider their needs and expectations. So the simple example which just wanted to share, if your company uses AI for recruitment, right? So the interested parties can be job applicants, HR team, hiring managers, company management, AI vendor, and regulate. So what are their expectations? Their expectations can be fair hiring decisions, data privacy should be there, reliable AI results, and compliances are being followed as per the laws. So what will be our responsibility? We have to decide how our AI management will meet those expectations of every interested parties, right, or every stakeholders. So there are different interested parties. It can be customers who are basically the AI system users, right? Then we have regulatory authorities and the policy makers. Then we have AI subjects, the people those who are getting affected by AI decisions. It can be an employee or an internal AI users. It can be an AI system supplier or a platform providers. It can be investors and governing body members, right? So it can be anyone, right? So these are not the limited. I mean, there can be more interested parties as well. So here also I've given one example. So customer expect AI to be accurate, secure, and trustworthy. Regulator expects compliance with laws and ethical requirements. Employee needs a proper training and the clear responsibilities. Management expects AI to be support business objectives while managing risk. So in one sentence, if I want to say interested parties who can affect your AI systems or be affected by it, know who they are, understand what they expect, and decides what your organization will do to meet those expectations, right? So by understanding these expectations, it helps us to design an AI management systems that meets both business and compliance requirement. Now let us move to clause 4.3, which is AIMS scope, right? So once we understand the organization and its context, we have also understood the interested parties. Now the next step is to determine the scope of AI management system. So the scope is basically a boundaries of AI management system, right? So we have to clearly define what are our boundaries. So what are boundaries? Boundaries are basically where does your AIMS starts and stops conceptually, right? So for example, does it cover your AI development process or also a post deployment monitoring? So we have to specify what exactly it is going to cover your AI management standard. Then we have to also consider the locations. So for example, which locations or which geographic site you have to include, right? So for an example, if your office is in Vadodara, right, or maybe your office is in Mumbai, right? So whether you have to include your main office which is in Mumbai, or you also have to include the other branches which is, for example, in Hyderabad or maybe Bangalore, right? So whether you have to include all the branches or whether you have to include a specific location or specific branch, right? So the next is services. So which business service or a product we have to include in our AIMS scope, right? So for example, only your customer facing chatbot, right? So if you have a chatbot which is a customer facing and you also only want to include that particular application or a chatbot in your AIMS scope, then you can include that only, right? And exclude all the other business functions. Or if you also want to include other business functions, including this AI chatbot, then you can include, for example, here I have mentioned, right? You can also include your development processes, DevOps, your other business functions, right? So you have to specify which business functions or which business applications you want to include in your AIMS scope. Then we have to define AI systems, right? So which specific AI systems or models are in scope by the name. So we have to mention the model name or AI systems which we are going to include in the scope, right? So here I have taken an example that we in the company, if we have the Wazoo, right? So Wazoo is basically a SIEM tool which is an open source, and if you want if you have integrated that Vazo with AI, right? So basically we are using some or the other third party models, right? Whether do we need to include that Vazo as an AI system, or we have to exclude that, right? Then we have departments, right? So here we have to define which team or which business functions which are going to be covered in the AIMS scope. So for example, IT security are in scope. We can exclude finance if it is not using AI or not getting affected by AI, right? So that can be excluded, right? So then we have exclusions, right? So exclusions are also important. So whatever controls, if we are excluding, we have to justify that. Why are we excluding, right? So when we define our scope or when we create our statement of applicability, then there are different controls in that, right? So if there is any control, if we are excluding that, we have to proper justify that, right? So just to give you an example, this is my statement of applicability, right? So here you can see there are different controls which are there, which are for ISO 42001. So whether it is applicable, yes or no, we have to specify that. If we are saying that this control is not applicable to me or to my organization, then we can specify no. But when we specify no, we also have to justify that. Why are we excluding this particular scope, right? So for example, any kind of development related control which is applicable to the organization who are actually developing the models, right? So if we are not the one who are developing the models, then we can exclude that particular scope. This is just an example. So when we define the scope, the organization should consider internal and external issues, requirements of interested parties, understand the business objectives, understand the AI related products, services, and the processes. We have to also identify the locations, departments, and the functions which we want to include, any kind of outsourced AI activities or a third party providers, right? So considering all these aspects, we have to define our scope. So the scope, why it is important? A scope helps us to ensure that everyone understand what is covered by the AI management system, right? So when there is an audit, right, so auditor can simply understand the scope. Whatever you have written in the scope, only that functions will be audited. The controls which are applicable to you, whether which are included, only those clauses will be audited. The exclusion part, they will only ask you for the justifications, rest will not be audited. So here you can see there is one example which I have given. So an AI management systems of Acme Financial Services covers development, deployment, and ongoing use of credit risk scoring AI models and customer facing chatbot system operated by technology divisions at our London headquarters. So here you can see the company is Acme Financial Services that covers development, deployment, and ongoing use of credit scoring AI models. So they have covered development department, deployment department, and ongoing use of credit risk scoring AI models, right? So the model which is responsible for scoring, risk scoring, credit risk scoring, right? And they have also included a customer facing chatbot which is operated by a technology division of the company, right, which is at a London headquarters. This is how you can define your company's or your organization scope, right? Then the last is implementing the AIMS. So after we have understood the organization context, which is 4.1, identified interested parties, which is 4.2, and defined the scope, right? This clause will require you to actually go and implement, maintain, establish, and continually improve your AI management system. This includes all the processes needed, how they can interact with each other. So it should be a process-based approach. It is similar to the other ISO management standard, right? We have to document all the processes, policies, procedures, and we have to convey all those documents and procedures to the entire organization. So we have to create a culture of AI management system so that everyone understand the importance of AI management system and they can implement those in their day-to-day functions, right? Then we have to integrate with the existing management system. So if we already have some or the other standard which are already there, right, we can integrate those with ISO 42001, right? So if we already have 27001 which is already there in the organization, right, so our approach should be like we have to integrate ISO 42001 with the same standard so that our process becomes smooth and easy to integrate, right, and it becomes 40 to 50% faster. Then we have to have a documented information as an evidence, right? So every standard demands the same. Whatever we follow, whatever we perform, we have to make sure that the evidences are available. Just like clause 4.3, everything here needs to be backed by documented information. We should have policies, procedures, records, right? So those will be definitely required by an auditor to review as a proof that AIMS is actually functioning and it is not just a design, right? So they can verify the actual implementation of AIMS. Then we have continual improvement, right? So continual improvement is nothing but you have to make sure that the AI management system which we have implemented, it continuously keeps on evolving, keeps on improving, and keeps on making it better and better day by day, right? So it is not about just like one time implementation and that's it, we are done, right? So whatever policies we define, whatever technology advancements that are coming, whatever security threats are emerging, right, so we have to make sure that we consider all those things and we update our policies, procedures, we update our AI AI management systems, we updates our AI systems, we understand the customer expectations. If the AI systems which are not going according to the customer expectations, we make sure that we go and fine tune those AI systems, right? So whatever we do as a part of continual improvement, right, it should be documented as an evidence. We have to learn from the incidents, we have to learn from the requirements, right? So we have to learn from our mistakes, we have to learn from the feedbacks, right? So these all steps will make us our AI systems more and more better and effective, right? So this is what we call as a continual improvement. That is what we have for this video. In the next video, we are going to cover clause 5, which is a most important clause in any ISO audit, right? So auditors specifically look for leadership commitment, not just a signed document from the leaders or a leadership, right? So top management must be able to speak knowledgeably about the AIMS and about their roles of AIMS. If this helped, hit the like and subscribe button. It really helps this series to reach more and more IT professionals and more people.